Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, there's exultation in Kenya's Shona community as over 800 of the formerly stateless members are given ID cards and citizenship, which will transform their lives. Also, over 354 million people live with hepatitis around the world, leading to over 1 million deaths a year. On World Hepatitis Day, our correspondents in Gabon speak to campaigners hoping to make treatment more affordable. And comics are coming home. African graphic novelists are forging ahead, making a global name for themselves with titles and characters rooted in the continent's culture. But first, after generations of living without papers, more than 800 members of Kenya's Shona community have been granted citizenship. The Shona arrived in the country from Zimbabwe and Zambia in 1959, but upon independence, lost their original citizenship, making many stateless. Their descendants have continued to be unable to officially work, open bank accounts, and access basic services. Their new ID cards will offer security that many have dreamed of since birth. Ayanat Mercy has more.
Celebrations in Kenya today as nearly 2,000 people, after generations of effort, received something they thought they might never get: citizenship. These are some of the Shona people who arrived in this country starting in 1959 from Zimbabwe. They came to work as missionaries and stayed put following Kenyan independence in 1963. But their arrival before independence put them in a legal gray area. As recent arrivals, they weren't included in the country's new constitution. And as many stayed, they lost their ability to prove their Zimbabwean ancestry and therefore their right to claim that citizenship too. So this left them stateless. And the effects of this have been devastating. Students lacking paperwork have had to drop out of school. Adults are usually limited to informal work. Banking, financing, owning land are near impossible, while exclusion from the National Health Scheme means that many Shona women are forced to deliver their babies at home, the Kenyan Human Rights Commission said. So today is a big step for the Shona and for Kenya's approximately 18,000 stateless people as a whole. The country's Interior Minister, Fred Matiang'i, said today that the country is on track to register all stateless people by December, a critical first step towards eventual citizenship. This is a big deal because as a stateless person, you have no dignity, Wanja Munaita, who worked with UNHCR in the Shona case, told me today. You become not just a legal shadow, you become a human being.
In a spectacular about-turn from the policy of her predecessor, Tanzania's president kicked off her country's COVID-19 vaccination campaign by publicly receiving a dose of Johnson & Johnson herself. Samia Suluhu Hassan took over as leader after John Magufuli died in March. He long denied the impact of the pandemic on the country and insisted that infection could be defeated with prayer. Tanzania is one of the last countries in the world to embrace vaccines. It's now facing a third wave of infections, and Hassan's urged people to get the voluntary jabs. But the skepticism of the previous administration does persist amongst many communities. And France is going to return millions of dollars of public money embezzled from Equatorial Guinea after upholding the money laundering conviction of the country's vice president. Teodoro Obiang, who is also the son of the president, was originally convicted in 2017 by a Paris court. He received a 3-year suspended sentence, a €30 million fine, and tens of millions worth of property in France were ordered to be seized. This week, France's top court threw out Obiang's final appeal. He claimed that he'd had immunity from prosecution and did not appear in court. He was accused of spending exorbitant sums in France to fund a lavish lifestyle, and anti-corruption groups have welcomed the judgment.
La justice française lui a confisqué plusieurs biens estimés à environ 150 millions d'euros. Alors 150 millions d'euros pour un pays comme la Guinée équatoriale, qui est un tout petit pays mais avec un sous-sol extrêmement riche, mais dont la population vit avec moins de $2 par jour, eh bien c'est bien plus que ce que la Guinée équatoriale dépense chaque année pour le budget de sa santé. 150 millions d'euros, voilà. Et en termes vraiment très pratiques, eh bien, ça pourrait permettre de vacciner 3 fois la population équato-guinéenne contre la maladie de Covid-19.
Now, the head of a banned Shiite group has been acquitted of all criminal charges. Ibrahim Zakzaki, the leader of the Islamic movement in Nigeria, or IMN, and his wife Zina had been detained for murder since 2015 after around 350 IMN members were killed in Kaduna State in an army crackdown. Their release was court-ordered in 2016, but authorities ignored the directive. That led to fatal clashes with security forces in Abuja. Zakzaki's been calling for an Islamic revolution, and the IMN was banned in Nigeria in 2019. Now, health organizations around the world are taking stock of progress made in eliminating hepatitis. Over 354 million people live with the infection globally, and that leads to over 1 million deaths every year. July 28th is World Hepatitis Day. Our correspondents in Gabon sent us this report.
Laid out before her on the table in her home in Libreville are about 15 different kinds of medication that Pascal has to take daily. The 13-year-old suffers from hepatitis C. Attacks can incapacitate Pascal for days. Treatment for her severe pain can cost the equivalent of up to €230 per month, which her mother struggles to afford.
Nous vivons la maladie de Pascal vraiment pénible. Sa maladie a vraiment beaucoup impacté sur sa scolarité. Parce que quand elle fait des crises, elle ne peut pas aller à l'école.
Pascal is one of around 350,000 Gabonese people infected with hepatitis, accounting for as much as 16% of the population. Vulnerable patients often struggle to pay for treatment, as just screening for the disease can cost around €15. Dr. Patrice Binumba treats about 20 patients a week at this hospital. He says cases of hepatitis B and C are common and can be fatal.
Il faut savoir qu'il y a 5 types d'hépatites virales. Il y a la A, la B, la C, la D qu'on appelle delta et la E. Celle qui nous préoccupe le plus, c'est l'hépatite B et l'hépatite C, parce qu'elles donnent des maladies chroniques comme la cirrhose du foie et même le cancer du foie.
These members of a patient advocacy group are visiting to raise awareness about hepatitis among staff. For the last 4 years, Elizabeth Mbinga's NGO has lobbied the government to make it easier for more people to get diagnosed and to provide patients with financial support.
L'hépatite virale a été répertoriée comme l'un des domaines prioritaires des objectifs de développement durable liés à la santé. La cure de 12 semaines contre l'hépatite C est à 1 500 000 francs CFA. Par conséquent, nous attendons à ce que les décideurs nationaux s'efforcent à l'éliminer.
Gabon has no national program dedicated to fighting hepatitis, despite the disease affecting an estimated 3 times as many people as AIDS.
Well, African graphic novels are evolving. Like many of the thrilling characters they feature, their origin story has humble beginnings, but as the industry matures, it's forging ahead without fear, battling for a place on the global stage for recognition of the cultures it represents. Our correspondents went to meet South African artist Loyiso Mkhize, who's just signed with American comic giant DC Comics.
At 34, Loyiso Mkhize landed a contract with one of America's most famous comic book publishers. Because of the pandemic, he had to work remotely. In less than a month, he created an episode of a series for DC Comics.
You know, just reigniting the story of Batwing as a formidable character in the DC universe, which is something I really enjoy about being a comic book penciler, particularly, because you're just taking written script and you're making it visual. And yeah, we've got the book, and it was finally published recently last month. And yeah, this is my episode.
The album is already being reprinted in the United States. Loyiso is not on his first success story. For South Africans, he is better known as the author of Kwezi, the first local superhero created 8 years ago. A trendy 19-year-old man who lives in Gold City, a metropolis with a strong resemblance to Johannesburg.
Kwezi is something that we always keep in stock. When they were initially created, it was just such a small team. It had a really small readership, but now it's very popular and it can be read really by anyone.
He's now working on an animated film featuring Kwezi. His artwork will be on display in a Cape Town gallery. He wants graphic novels to be better appreciated on a continent where their distribution is still patchy.
It's the access to this stuff that can be, tricky. I'm from Ectu and Butterworth in the Eastern Cape, so Growing up, I mean, I did have eventually access to comic books, but it was that much harder.
As more African comics emerge, their creators are hoping that more readers will fuel the industry's evolution.
Now, Tunisia's president has said that wrong economic choices caused major financial pressure on the country. It's the first time that Kais Saied's spoken publicly since triggering a crisis on Sunday by sacking the prime minister and suspending parliament. On Wednesday, he said that hundreds of Tunisians had stolen around $5 billion worth of public money. Well, Wasim Corneo is following that and joins us now. Wasim, tell us more about what he had to say and how it all ties in with the country's political landscape.
Hi, Georgia. You're absolutely right. This was the first public appearance of the president, Kais Saied, since Sunday's shock announcement. It was an interview, about a 20-minute long interview that was published on his Facebook page and then aired on national TV, an interview with the head of the union representing business owners. As you said, he went on a tirade against allegedly 460 people who he says have looted the Tunisian people. That is according to a report published by the National Institute Against Corruption, and those 460 people have allegedly stolen 13.5 billion dinars. That's about 4.2 billion euros. He took a moment to reach out to those people, saying that he would offer them a penal settlement if they did return that stolen money. As you mentioned also, he did add that the wrong economic decisions had led to this disastrous economic situation. He also asked traders and business owners to lower prices of commodities to help alleviate the financial strain of Tunisian people. Now, this interview is clearly an attempt by the president to show his support for the people. I mean, we've heard all around throughout the day. We've been reporting throughout the day that a majority of Tunisians support Kais Saied's shock decision, and so this is a way for him to promote himself as close to the people once again.
Thanks very much. Wasim Corner there for us. Well, that's it, though, for Eye on Africa. Do join us again if you can. Take care.